Vampires are among the most famous of supernatural creatures, if not the most famous, overshadowing even the likes of werewolves, witches, and Bigfoot. They continue to appear throughout pop culture, morphing with each creator's whim. However, if there's one defining trait which makes a vampire, it's their thirst for blood. In typical myths, vampires have particular traits. Along with the blood-sucking, they're hurt by the sunlight, sickened by garlic, endangered by a stake to the heart, and sensitive to fire. In some legends, they're even conflated with werewolves, transforming into wolves or being weakened by silver. In Dracula, vampires can turn into bats or mist, and enchant those they encounter. Their victims might even be seduced by them. The vampires within Stephenie Meyer's world share many similarities with their mythological counterparts. They avoid sunlight, they're supernaturally strong and fast, and they don't like fire. There are plenty of differences though, and like other creators, Meyer has taken liberties with the creatures. There have been mixed reactions to the changes made, but I have to give the author points for creativity. Before we continue, I'm Riley and this is Otherworldly Fiction. On this channel, I discuss fantasy books, share lore, study fictional characters, and offer writing advice. If any of that sounds like your cup of blood, hit that subscribe button. Posts are on Fridays. Twilight's vampires have become famous in their own right, for better or for worse. While many scoffed at the idea of vampire sparkling, it was a unique idea. Moreover, other attributes developed by Meyer for her bloodsuckers were actually pretty clear. Section number 1 covers the transformation process. If you've read the books, the transformation into a vampire is one of the more vivid parts of the series, and I like how Meyer handled it. Even if her vampires are on the softer side, her depiction of their turning is surprisingly intense and realistic, or as realistic as transforming into a vampire can be. If you're going to become one of the damned, the process should be neither pleasant nor easy. As with vampires from other myths, Meyer's creations begin their lives as humans. They only become a vampire once they're bitten, but the change can still be reversed at this stage, if another vampire can suck the venom from the human victim without themselves draining the human. If a human survives a vampire bite without turning, they'll still bear a cold, silvery scar. This is the case for Bella, but what's not clear is if the turning has been prevented before. While Bella proves it can be, Bella is in a special situation. Most humans wouldn't have the luxury of calling on another vampire to remove the venom. Without intervention, a human will change into a vampire over a period of 3 days. This is an excruciating process, as the vampire-to-be will feel as though he or she is on fire. If the victim attempts to move or speak during this process, they will likely scream. The fire, which is actually the venom, spreads through the body. It starts at the point of entry and then snakes throughout. Towards the end of this process, the victim will start to experience their new senses. She will be able to hear faraway sounds, an indication that the process is nearly complete. But the most intense part of the turning is yet to come. The venom reaches the heart last, and the heart instinctively fights against it. The fire reaches a new level of heat, and it's all the victim can do to hold on. Finally, the flames engulf the heart and its frantic beating ceases. After that, the transformation is complete, and a dull burn remains in the vampire's throat. Similar to the pain of transformation, but much more bearable, this is an indication of thirst. Section number 2 is a vampire's physical appearance. Vampires always begin life with red eyes, and these are especially bright during their first few months. Vividly crimson, they almost seem to glow. While a lack of self-control will keep a newborn away from society, even those who master themselves quickly will still have to wait until their eyes lose their intensity. Afterwards, a vampire's eyes will shift. They'll remain red and appear especially bright if a vampire has just fed on a human. However, if a vampire begins to drink animal blood, their eye color will change. This process is gradual. The vampire's eyes will first appear amber, until finally fading into a distinctive yellow. Of course, if a vegetarian vampire has a relapse, their eyes will become red again. Whether a vampire chooses to drink human blood or animal blood, their eyes will also change depending on their thirst level. If they're well fed, their eyes will be bright. If they're thirsty, their eyes will be darker, finally darkening to near black if they haven't fed in a long time. Regardless of their skin tone while human, all vampires have a chalky pallor. Even if they're darker, their skin will still have a powdery complexion, and will be as hard and smooth as stone. In fact, their whole bodies are like marble. If a human tries to shove a vampire, it will be like shoving a statue. A vampire's lips look glassy, and their features will have a natural beauty. Not all vampires are attractive, as evidenced by James's description in the book, but their features are always enhanced. The majority of vampires are beautiful, with smooth skin and symmetrical features. If a human is on the homely side before their transformation, they will, as was the case with James, manage to look plain on becoming a vampire. James wasn't described as beautiful, but there are few, if any, ugly vampires. Part of the rarity of vampires who are less than beautiful comes down to vanity, as those who are pretty are more likely to be offered immortality in the first place. Any marks, such as freckles, stretch marks, or scars, will also disappear. Even tattoos will vanish, and skin exposed to sunlight will sparkle. As a result, vampires are generally nocturnal. The idea that the sun will set them on fire is only a myth, but a helpful one to explain their behavior. Vampires can still lose limbs or become scarred. Other vampires will leave their mark, and too many fights will result in the surface of a vampire's skin being spattered in crescent-shaped scars. Thankfully, such scars are nearly impossible for humans to see. Only other immortals will be able to see them, receiving a warning not to attack. It is only after becoming a vampire herself that Bella notices Jasper's many bite marks. The only defect vampires have, as a result of their transformation, are circles under their eyes. This can be alleviated by frequent feeding, but a lack of blood will cause a vampire to look tired if they're spotted by humans. While this doesn't necessarily detract from a vampire's appearance, it is noticeable. Yellow eyes, chalky skin, and bags under the eyes might seem conspicuous, but not to the point vampires can't blend in. A human might notice something unusual, but the differences are subtle enough that a human won't think of vampires. Vampires don't have fangs, but their teeth and jaws are stronger, enabling them to clamp down on prey. Furthermore, vampires can also wear contacts to disguise the color of their eyes, though they'll have to change them every few hours, as the venom in their eyes will dissolve them. It's worth noting that vampires have to be careful when it comes to their appearance. Owing to how long they can stand still, they should take care not to grow lazy or complacent. Though rare, some vampires have petrified. While this doesn't inhibit their ability to see or move, it does make them unappealing to others. The Volturi, as a result of sitting too long, have developed a papery skin. Their voices are raspy, unnerving to hear, and their eyes, while still visibly red, have a film over them. Most vampires won't have to worry about experiencing this phenomenon, but having one's prey brought to them and all one's worries removed can leave a vampire looking more like the monster they are. Finally, a lack of change or aging forces even those vampires who own homes, like the Collins, to move on. A vampire can't gain or lose weight, grow taller, or even grow their hair. They can't change in any way, not even their fingernails will grow. Section number 3 are the newborns. Newborns stand out from other vampires, not only because of the brightness of their eyes, but because of their behavior. Caution is required around newborns. Early in life, they crave blood more than others, and lack the self-control of older vampires. If a human is bleeding, it will be nearly impossible for them to resist. Other vampires are needed to keep a newborn under control, lest they expose themselves to human scrutiny. Without a responsible creator, newborns can wreak great havoc. Their great thirst compels them to kill in even greater numbers, leading to a rash of disappearances in human news. Killing excessively and leaving behind a mess, an uncontrolled newborn risks the exposure of all vampires. Humans will notice something is wrong, even if they don't know what. Newborn vampires are also a risk to older vampires, because a vampire is the strongest in the first year of their life. This is the result of human blood, their own human blood remaining within them after they have turned. Drinking more blood can give any vampire a boost, but nothing will increase their strength the way their own blood does in the beginning. Thankfully, newborns have their weaknesses too. While physically stronger, their movements are thoughtless and predictable. Slaves to their thirst and easily distracted, newborns have one-track minds. Though dangerous in droves, a single newborn can be defeated by an older vampire, simply because the other vampire has the focus to outsmart them. Historically, newborns have been used in mass armies, which eventually led to the intervention of the Volturi. Creators bit humans en masse so that they might have a killing force, but this was dangerous, not only to other vampires, as the newborns often turned on one another, but to humans. With so many bloodthirsty vampires set loose, the death counts were unprecedented. They were so high, humans attributed the many disappearances and corpses to a mysterious disease. It was in South America where these newborn-driven wars were most prevalent, as the leaders of such armies hoped to claim more territory to feed in. While some escaped, operating at smaller scales, many in the initial frenzy were killed by the Volturi, who continue to clean up the streets if anyone else becomes careless. After a year, a newborn will begin to level out. Their blood cravings will become less intense, allowing them to keep a level head, and their superior strength will fade. They'll still require years to achieve true mastery of themselves, but how long this will take depends largely on the individual. Those who drink animal blood will also adjust faster, as those who drink human blood will always be less capable of controlling themselves around humans. Section number 4 covers diet. The majority of vampires, like their traditional counterparts in myth, drink human blood. They don't have to feed every day, and vampires can't starve in the sense that humans can, but some are greedier than others. Usually it's enough for a vampire to feed once every week or 2 weeks, but more feeding can give a vampire a boost if they plan to fight. If a vampire doesn't feed, they'll become crankier and struggle with their self-control. Unfed, they're more dangerous near humans, because the thirst takes control of their thoughts, and their eyes will gradually darken to black. Those vampires who feed on humans have crimson eyes. As for those who feed on animal blood, their eyes are yellow. As far as the Collins know, only their clan and the Denali family feed on animals. The rest of the world's vampires dine on humans, typically hunting alone or in pairs. A coven might have a third member, but even this is rare. Most pairs are mates. Feeding pushes vampires to be nomadic, lest too many deaths start to attract notice from humans. If a vampire kills humans in the woods, these deaths can be attributed to animal attacks. However, frequent enough deaths will raise alarms from humans and prompt most vampires to move on to a new territory. Feeding on animal blood doesn't leave a vampire weaker. What it comes down to is taste. It's the difference between enjoying sweets or having to eat vegetables the rest of one's life. Humans are delicious when compared with any animal, but some animals are better than others. Herbivores, while filling, aren't the most appealing, but carnivores, being closer to humans, taste better. Vampires can also develop preferences, acquiring a taste for animals like bears or mountain lions. Then there are the singers, so called because their blood seems to sing for the vampire who encounters them. Few vampires can resist singers when they do find them. These humans are rare, and even if they taste better overall, they won't seem special to other vampires. This makes them unique to the individual who finds them. And many vampires treat singers in the same way humans would treat a rare vintage wine, as a special treat to be enjoyed. Bella, as a general rule, is more appealing to all vampires. However, her blood only sings for Edward. making his resistance to her all the more incredible, and all the more baffling to other vampires, who see him as foregoing a privilege. Even Emmett couldn't resist when he encountered a singer, blemishing his otherwise clean record. As such, even those who drink animal blood can be dangerous to humans. A vampire is a vampire, and any vampire, especially when faced with a singer, can lose control. Plus, vampires who drink from animals have to be cautious in another way, lest they overhunt. It's important, like any predator, that they don't decimate the population. This is why camping trips are helpful, as a local group of animals can be allowed to replenish. Section number 5 covers a vampire's abilities. All vampires have basic advantages over humans. Without lifting a finger, they're naturally more charming to humans. Their faces are generally attractive, if not outright gorgeous. They have a floral scent, which is an inviting perfume to their victims, and their voices are pleasant, almost musical. As for what a typical vampire can do, each is much faster than the average human. Becoming a blur, they can outrun anything or anyone. They're incredibly strong, capable of breaking a bone or lifting an immense weight without effort, and they're tireless. A vampire can run, leap, climb, or lift without pause. Needing no sleep and having boundless energy, a vampire doesn't know fatigue. They can also stand still for stretches. It doesn't matter if they freeze for a few minutes or a few days. Their muscles don't ache and they don't tire. As such, many vampires will actually freeze as a stress response. Vampires don't need to breathe either, though it feels better to do so because it allows them to take in scents, and they can dive underwater for an indefinite period if they want to. Of course, a vampire has to be cautious if they hope to walk among humans. Since vampires don't blink, they have to feign that they do. They must practice slouching, fidgeting, and slow movements, lest others notice them. A wrong action could result in snapping a table in half, or breaking someone's neck with a hug, creating unwanted attention. A vampire's senses are incredible, as they can process everything with lightning speed. When running, for example, they never crash into anything because their mind can slow everything down. They can hear sounds from miles away, identify scents by person, thing, and how old or new they are, following trails. And they can see the tiniest details, having a vision as good as an eagle's. They can see more color than usual as well, seeing vivid colors at night where humans see only darkness, and an eighth shade humans can't see. A vampire's venom serves another purpose too, allowing movement where before water or blood did. Venom acts in place of other fluids, keeping the eyes moist and allowing vampires to salivate. Then there are vampires' mental capabilities. Able to multitask in their thoughts, their focus is incredible. They can learn quickly, if they're interested, tackling multiple languages, arts, and sciences with ease. They aren't capable of forgetting anything, allowing them to quote passages word for word, and they think at a quickened rate. Moreover, some vampires have gifts, superpowers, which set them apart even from other vampires. These are abilities which may even have manifested when they were human, if to a lesser degree. When a human is transformed, everything about them is intensified. In a sense, they become even more themselves, and their latent abilities are no exception. After transformation, some vampires can boost their abilities further with training. Some abilities even have classifications, such as that of the shield. These gifts vary wildly. Some can track others, some can read minds or see the future, some can cause pain or blindness, some can create hallucinations, some can defend against other gifts or affect the emotions of others, some can strengthen or lessen bonds, push for a certain future, or repulse those around them, and some can control the elements, wielding fire, water, and earth as additional weapons. There seem to be few limits to what gifts a vampire could have, but they're considered rare. Each individual will also have their own limits. No two gifts are exactly alike. As seen with Edward and Arrow. While both can read minds, their gifts operate differently. Edward can only pick up thoughts as they happen around him. Arrow can read every thought, parsing through a person's memories at his leisure, though he must touch the other person physically to do so. These gifts could be genetic. After all, Bella's human parents, when observed by Edward, have their own quirks. Charlie seems to have something of a shield, though it's not nearly as powerful as Bella's. Edward can still read Charlie's mind, though his thoughts are less clear than those of the average person, suggesting some level of protection. Likewise, Renesmee exhibits a gift which seems to invert both that of her mother and father. Rather than read minds, she pushes others to read hers. Moreover, just as Bella can't let anyone in, no one could keep Renesmee out. Other hybrids have their advantages over humans, but Renesmee is the only one noted for having an ability. Section number 6 covers a vampire's natural enemies. Vampires have few enemies besides other vampires, though there are 2 entities known to pose a threat to them. First are the shapeshifters, who call themselves werewolves. Hunting in packs and possessing super speed, they can kill vampires. In fact, they're practically designed for it, using their strength and coordination to bring bloodsuckers down. Of course, Yakav's pack is the only known one of its kind. While there could presumably be other shapeshifters in the world, they aren't mentioned. Therefore, provided a vampire avoids trespassing on the pack's land, this is a danger easily avoided. The only other threat to vampires are the Children of the Moon, who, transforming at the full moon into vicious beasts, are the real werewolves of the world. Though harmless as humans, the Children of the Moon can kill vampires while transformed into werewolves. As such, vampires hunted the Children of the Moon to near extinction in order to protect themselves. Left vulnerable while human, they stood little chance of defending themselves once found out. The Volturi, too, were involved in their massacre, as a near-death experience with a werewolf prompted Caius to destroy them. Other creatures aren't mentioned in the text, though Meyer could always change that. But thus far, only shapeshifters and the Children of the Moon are capable of destroying vampires. Humans are mostly helpless, though this could change. Arrow suggests that humans could hurt vampires with their technology. Even a vampire would be endangered, for example, by the likes of a nuclear bomb. Therefore, secrecy is more important than ever for vampires. In an age of science and war, it's best for vampires to be thought fictional. Otherwise, if found out, modern humans could potentially pose a threat to them. Plus, if incapacitated by anyone, human or otherwise, vampires have one weakness in the form of fire. If torn apart, fire is the only way to destroy a vampire, turning them to ashes. Section number 7 covers vampire children. There's only one thing more dangerous and mindless than a newborn vampire, and that's a newborn human being made into a vampire. Considered taboo in vampire circles, where nearly anything goes, the immortal children pose a great threat. Their creation is outlawed by the Volturi, and evil as the Volturi are, it's actually a fair law. Children, when turned, are frozen at their current age, not only physically, but mentally. While an older teen who is being turned can mature with time and broaden their knowledge, true children don't have the same luxury. A 5-year-old transformed will always slink like a 5-year-old. But this is dangerous because they still have a vampire strength. Prone to tantrums, and as impulsive as human children, they can destroy swaths of humans in a fit of rage. They can't be taught, and they can't learn beyond their years, making them a risk factor when it comes to the exposure of vampires. Worse still, once created, few have the heart to destroy them. Nearly all children are adorable, and becoming a vampire only intensifies this. Adult vampires find them impossible to resist, and whole covens have been willing to die to protect their youngest member. Of course, it's unethical to bite a child, forcing them to live as a child forever, and stealing from them any chance of growth. But it's also dangerous to all vampires. Even younger teens pose a threat, as they can be thoughtless in their own way. Jane and Alec, for example, were nearly changed too young. Arrow had meant to allow them more growth, but a threat to their lives forced him to change them sooner. Though Alex seems behaved enough, Jane's being a teen has made her more challenging to rein in, though not impossible. Hybrid children, while rare, are different. Though they could have their risks if not attended to, these are small. This is because even though they are children physically, their mental capabilities outstrip their physical age. As such, those who appear to be toddlers can reason more like adults. They can think things through and be made to understand that there could be consequences to their actions. In a nutshell, they can learn self-control and do so rapidly. Their physical growth is also rapid. It takes them only 7 years to become adults, by which time they will stop aging and remain young as full-fledged vampires do. Half human and half vampire, hybrids take the best from both species. They have beating hearts and warm blood, and they can survive off of human food. But like vampires, they are faster, stronger, and immortal. They aren't as fast or strong as pure vampires, but they are faster and stronger than average humans. And their skin, while softer than vampires, is tougher than that of a human. Finally, they are powerful enough to bite and hunt, and they prefer blood to human food. Interestingly, some hybrids can be venomous, though this ability seems to belong exclusively to male hybrids. If a female hybrid bites someone, nothing will happen. On the other hand, if a male hybrid bites a human and leaves him alone, said human will become a full-fledged vampire. This is where a hybrid's risk lies, because a male is venomous from birth. If a human picks up a male hybrid baby, they will likely be bitten and therefore transformed. Otherwise, hybrids, especially those who have grown to adulthood, are actually safer than vampires as far as exposure risk goes. Capable of eating food and blushing, they can blend in better. They can even go into sunlight. Their skin has a faint glow, but it's subtle. Most would overlook it, and so hybrids could walk among humans with no problems. If they needed to keep a low profile, they could also switch out human blood for sandwiches and ice cream. It's unknown if hybrids can become pregnant or not. For my part, I believe they can, though there are reasonable arguments among fans for both sides. While it's true that hybrids can't change as far as aging goes, their ability to digest food, blush, and so on suggests they can change in other ways. Their hair can likely grow, and their body has already shifted through childhood. After the change from baby to adult, pregnancy wouldn't even seem that drastic a change, though only Meyer can settle this dispute. In conclusion, the vampires of the Twilight universe are surprisingly well developed as far as the world building goes. Fans and critics will continue to argue the merits of the changes Meyer made to vampires, but she at least earns points for originality. Silly as sparkling skin might seem, it was a trait which was nothing if not memorable, and nobody else would have thought of it. Meyer's vampires have similarities to those of ancient legend, sporting washed-out skin, superpowers, and great physical prowess. Plus, her vampires also kept the most important trait. They are bloodsuckers, only thriving by consuming the blood of their victims. Her vampires differ from the myths too. They don't burst into flames if they step into sunlight, they aren't weak to garlic, crosses, or wooden stakes, and they don't require sleep. Red-eyed or yellow-eyed, sparkling in the sun, and staying awake indefinitely, foregoing either coffins or beds, Meyer's vampires are a creation in their own right. Unique, but still recognizably vampires, they have become cemented in the vampire canon. Critics can resent this, but the fact remains that Twilight's vampires are memorable, and credit has to be given to Meyer for her world building, however contentious sparkling may be. Do you consider yourself a Twilight fan? And if so, what's your favorite part about vampires? Would you become a vampire? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and happy reading.